Cousin abandoned her kids on my doorstep for a cruise, leaving me baffled, overwhelmed, and ready to call child services. My girlfriend and I don't have kids, so people are always telling us how much extra free time we must have. None more than my cousin, who has 4 young children. Lately, she'd been joking that we should take care of all her kids while she and her new boyfriend took a cruise. It always sounded so outrageous that I just laughed along with her, never really believing she was serious. So, we both happened to have an extra day off, thanks to the long weekend. That morning, around 7 a.m., there was a loud knocking at the door. It couldn't have been the postman, they never come by that early, and we weren't expecting anyone. Still groggy, I stumbled downstairs to check, curiosity quickly turning to shock. There, shivering on the doorstep, were my cousin's 4 kids. No sign of their mother anywhere. I opened the door and brought them inside immediately. It was freezing outside, and not a single one of them had a jacket. Still in disbelief, I asked where their mom was. That's when they dropped the bombshell. She'd told them I would look after them while she went off on her cruise, and sent them on a bus to my house. It was almost too ridiculous to process. Was this real life? I grabbed my phone and tried calling her, straight to voicemail. Then I tried her new boyfriend. No luck, just another unanswered call. I sat the kids down and asked exactly what their mom had told them. As clear as day, they told me, she said, since you don't have any responsibilities and have free time, you said you will look after us while she's gone. I was reeling. Desperate for answers, I called my aunt. Maybe she could shed some light, maybe this was all some bizarre misunderstanding. My aunt, however, said the same thing. Apparently my cousin told her that I had agreed to take care of the kids. She didn't even bother bringing them over herself. She just put them on a bus in the middle of winter without jackets and sent them on their way. I can't believe the level of irresponsibility. At this point, I'm seriously considering calling child services. Update 1. A few hours after my cousin's kids landed on my doorstep, chaos truly set in. My head was spinning as my partner and I tried to figure out what to do next. First things first, I got them fed, cranked up the heater, and made sure they were as comfortable as possible. Still, not a peep from their mom or her boyfriend, just straight to voicemail every time I called. The uncertainty in that house was thick. Then, at around 10:30 in the morning, my phone rang. It was a private number, and when I answered, it was the police on the other end. They asked if I had 4 kids at my address, and I admitted, a little warily, that yes, I did, and quickly explained what had happened. That's when I learned the real story. The bus driver who delivered them was the one who'd called it in. Apparently, during the trip, the kids told him they were off to stay with family and rattled off my address. 4 youngsters, traveling alone in the cold, no jackets or bags. That driver clocked that something was seriously off and, after dropping them at my place, called for a welfare check, just to be safe. Not long after, police and child protection officers showed up on my doorstep. They were professional, calm, but the tension in the air told me they saw this as a big deal, rightly so. I laid everything out for them, every bizarre detail, every unanswered call. I even showed them the jokey texts from my cousin about me watching the kids, never anything clear, just her hinting around, nothing remotely close to confirmation. In their own words, the kids told the officers their mom claimed I had loads of time and would be happy to have them. About 90 minutes later, the police gave me an update. They'd gone down to the cruise terminal at Circular Quay, not even too far from my house, and right on schedule. It turned out the ship she was boarding was about to depart. They found her there, new boyfriend in tow, completely oblivious. She was already in full cruise mode, sunglasses perched on her head, lanyard swinging, not a care in the world. The police made her get off the ship, no arguments. She arrived at my door, not a shred of concern etched on her face, just bluster and indignation. She breezed past her kids, barely glancing their way, and hissed, "Did you seriously get the police involved?" My jaw nearly hit the floor. I told her point blank, she dumped 4 kids on me with zero warning, no bags, no contact info, nothing. She launched into a tirade about how I'd humiliated her and ruined her holiday. Then, as if things couldn't get more surreal, my aunt called, her mum, absolutely seething. She screamed that I had gone too far and that her money, spent on treating her daughter to a cruise, had been wasted. Not 1 ounce of concern for the kids. None. Meanwhile, child protection was taking my statement and making it crystal clear to my cousin that this was a substantial neglect issue and would be formally investigated. She couldn't have cared less, just snatched her kids, offered not so much as a thank you or apology, and departed, shooting daggers at me like I was the problem. After the dust settled, I tried to call both her and my aunt again to explain that I was not the one who'd called the cops or child services. It didn't matter, they wouldn't hear a word, and before long, both blocked my number. Update 2. A couple of days after my cousin came to pick up the kids, after she'd been dragged off the cruise ship, Fax got back in touch and asked me a few follow-up questions. While we were talking, they casually mentioned they'd contacted the kid's biological father and told him everything that had happened. I was actually stunned. I hadn't even realized he was still in the picture. From what I remembered, he'd moved out to regional NSW years back, I think somewhere near Wagga. Apparently all this time, he's been paying child support and making genuine efforts to stay in touch, but my cousin made it nearly impossible for him. She'd ignore his calls, block his number, even cancel visits with no warning. Classic tactics. Well, when he found out what she'd done, leaving those kids to catch a bus alone in the dead of winter and dumping them on my doorstep, he was livid, didn't hesitate. He jumped in his car and drove straight to Sydney that same night. The next morning, he showed up at our house. Genuinely a nice guy, clearly shaken, but holding himself together. He told me he just needed to hear everything from someone who was actually there. So we sat down, just the two of us, and he asked about the kids, how they were, if they'd said anything, and every detail about what happened. I could see how much he genuinely cared for them. Then he looked me straight in the eye and said he was going to apply for full custody. He'd been documenting everything for years, the cancelled visits, the never-ending excuses, the weird stories or behaviors he'd noticed when the kids did come back to him, and now this. This was the final straw. Leaving the kids that way, not even sending a message to anyone? He told me there was no way he would let them grow up thinking that sort of treatment was normal. I told him I fully supported him. Those kids deserve stability more than anything. He looked so grateful. He thanked us for taking them in, for not turning them away when they had nowhere else to go. He left soon after, determined to speak with a solicitor. Now, this is where things got completely surreal. Last night, our car was vandalized. All 4 tires, slashed. Nothing else was touched, just the tires. This morning, my girlfriend discovered it when she went to head out for work. There was no note, no witnesses, nothing obvious. We don't have any security cameras, but we've already spoken with our neighbors to see if anyone captured anything on their CCTV from overnight. I can't say for sure who did it, but honestly, considering the timing, I have my suspicions. Especially since just yesterday, a family member called to blame us for turning the family against my cousin. No actual proof yet, but I've reported it to the police just in case. Honestly, we're beyond exhausted. We never asked for any of this, just tried to do the right thing when 4 scared, freezing kids were suddenly on our doorstep. And now, the entire family seems to be rallying behind her, swallowing her version of the story whole. I'm honestly contemplating laying everything out in a Facebook post, all the information, all the facts, because things are getting out of hand, and it feels like the truth needs to finally come out. Update 3. Things escalated again, and fast. Last night, around 7:30 p.m., there was a knock at the door. My girlfriend answered and just froze on the spot. Standing there was my cousin's eldest, just 11 years old, alone in the dark, clutching a small school bag. No jacket, no phone. All he said was, "Mom told me to come stay here for a bit." We were stunned. Of course, we immediately asked where his siblings were. He said, "They're with her boyfriend." I didn't want to stay there anymore. The more we pressed, the more it became clear, he hadn't wanted to be there, and when he tried to say something, his mom told him, "Leave if you don't like it here." So he did. Without a moment's hesitation, we took him inside, set him up with something warm to eat, and called the police. They arrived quickly, facts with them, and because of the previous cruise incident, they treated this seriously. The boy revealed things no child ever should. He explained his mom had been yelling all day, locked away in her room while no one took care of them. He remembered how calm our place felt and just wanted to come back. Soon after, Fax and the police went to my cousin's house. Later, we learned the other children were removed from the home, and my cousin had been brought in for questioning. Now there's an open investigation into neglect and abandonment. Maybe it was guilt, maybe pressure from Fax, or maybe it was just everything catching up to her, but I'd heard she'd been spiraling since the cruise debacle. The next morning, my aunt, my cousin's mother, turned up at our door, absolutely beside herself with rage. She screamed at us, blaming me for destroying the family, saying I'd turned the kids against their mother, even accusing me of stealing her grandchildren from her. That cruise was the first time she was happy in years, and you ruined it because you don't like kids, she shouted. We shut the door and reported the incident. The police advised us to document everything and told us we could apply for an AVO if this happened again. That afternoon, the biological father's lawyer called. He said the father was pursuing full custody and asked me if I'd be willing to provide a character reference and a statement about what happened, what the kids said, how they were when they arrived, and how we'd become involved. I agreed instantly. I never asked to be caught in the middle of this, but if my voice can help those kids find a better life, I'm all in. The thing that struck a chord with both of us happened just before Fax left with the eldest boy. He gave my girlfriend a hug and said, "You're the only people who made me feel normal." That landed like a punch to the gut. We're emotionally stepping back now, but whatever's asked of us to help those kids, we'll do. I'm ready. Update 4. This morning started with a call from Fax asking if I could get to the children's court at Parramatta. They said it would be quick, an urgent application for interim care orders, and that my statement was already on file, but they wanted me present in case the magistrate had questions. I grabbed my jacket and went. Their dad was already there when I arrived, suit and tie, a folder tucked under his arm, looking equal parts terrified and determined. A Fax caseworker met us at the door and walked us through what would happen. They were seeking interim placement with him, supervised contact for their mum, and a schedule for assessments. We hadn't even sat down when my cousin swept in with her boyfriend and my aunt behind her, full of noise, talking loudly about kidnapping and conspiracies, until a sheriff's officer told them to keep it down. When we finally got called in, it was clinical, almost surreal. The magistrate was calm, asked very straightforward questions, and let facts lead. They laid out the bus incident, the welfare check, the removal last night after the eldest turned up at my door, and the notes the kids had given to the caseworker. Then they asked the father to speak. He kept it simple. He'd been trying to be part of their lives for years. He had a room set up for each kid. At his place, he had steady work and a flexible boss, and he'd do whatever the court needed. My cousin tried to interrupt, said I'd coach the kids and that we hate children, and the magistrate shut it right down. Interim orders were made on the spot, the kids to live with their dad effective immediately, mother's time to be supervised at a contact center, fax to complete assessments and report back. Changeover to be managed by fax for now. The whole thing took less than 20 minutes. When we walked out, my cousin was pacing in the corridor, whispering furiously to my aunt. She stared me down as we passed and said, "You've ruined my life." I didn't answer. After court, fax asked if I'd be willing to be listed as an emergency contact at the kids' schools until everything stabilized. Their dad turned to me and said if I wasn't comfortable, he understood. I said yes. We went straight from Parramatta to the fax office where the kids were waiting. They looked small on the big plastic chairs, but when they saw their dad they lit up. The eldest gave me back my hoodie, folded, somehow, said, "Thanks," and then asked his dad if they could get meat pies on the way home. It felt like the first normal sentence I'd heard in weeks. I barely made it back to our place before my phone rang again, police this time. A neighbor had handed over their CCTV. Clear as day, a silver Camry pulling up outside our house the night the tires were slashed, a person getting out, crouching by each wheel with something in their hand, then driving off. The Rego matched a car my aunt uses. The officer said they were making inquiries and asked if I wanted to be notified if charges were laid. I said yes. I don't think I breathed properly for the next hour. By late afternoon, things went sideways again. The school phoned to say the kid's mom had turned up at pickup time and tried to sign the two middle ones out. The office had been briefed after court and refused. She started shouting in the foyer about parental rights, and staff hit their duress alarm. Police attended, spoke with her in the car park, and issued her a formal direction not to attend the schools without prior arrangement. Their dad arrived to collect them not long after, shaken but composed. He called me on the drive home and said, "They're okay." "We're okay." I could hear one of the little ones asking from the back seat if they could have pancakes for dinner. Just when I thought we might finally get a quiet night, my aunt turned up on our street again at dusk, pacing out front and pointing her phone at our windows like she was filming. We didn't engage. We called the police and waited with the lights off. When officers arrived, she started up with the same accusations and then tried to push past them towards our door. They served her with a provisional AVO on the spot, conditions not to approach or contact us. She swore at everyone and left. 10 minutes later, another unit knocked to let us know the same order had been applied for against my cousin as well, given the school incident and the ongoing harassment. Paperwork is being prepared. I ended the night back at our kitchen table with a pen in my hand, writing a formal statement about the tires and the school call. My girlfriend made tea and slid a biscuit tin across to me without a word. Around 9, my phone lit up with the dad's number. It was the eldest, already in pajamas, whispering so quietly I almost missed it, "We're safe." Then, louder, like he wanted the room to hear it, "Dad makes terrible pancakes." In the background, someone laughed. There's more to come, fax case plans, the next court date, whatever the police do with the CCTV, but the kids are with their father tonight, and that feels like a miracle in itself. We've locked the doors, saved every email, and put our names on the caller ID list at the kids' schools. I'm tired, but for the first time since that knock on our door at 7 a.m., I'm not terrified. I'm just ready to show up when I'm asked and then let the people whose job this is do theirs. Update 5. I thought things might level out for a minute. They didn't. At 8 a.m., a detective from our local station rang. He sounded almost cheerful, in that dry way cops do when they've got something concrete. He said they'd interviewed my aunt about the tires. She'd tried to say she'd lent the Camry to a friend that night, but couldn't name the friend or where she was at the time, and the timestamps didn't help her. They've issued a court attendance notice for malicious damage. He asked if I wanted my contact details suppressed on the brief and told me to expect a summons if it goes to hearing. He also said if she or anyone contacted us in the meantime, save it and call them. Don't engage, he kept repeating. I told him we'd been practicing that line for a week. Before I could finish a coffee, fax called to say they were holding a family group conference at the district office and wanted me there because I'm listed as emergency contact and the referral mentions me in about 6 places. I was expecting a sterile room and bad carpet. That's exactly what it was. The dad was already there, steady and tired. My cousin swept in late with the boyfriend and a tote bag, sunglasses still on inside. A facilitator explained who could be in the room and who couldn't. The boyfriend wasn't approved. He argued. A supervisor walked him back to the lift while my cousin stood in the doorway and called the whole thing a stitch up. They kept going without him. It was simple on paper and messy to sit through. The caseworker read out the orders, the incidents, and what had to happen next. My cousin tried to talk over almost every sentence. When the facilitator told her she'd only have supervised time at a center for now and she needed to confirm she understood, she started crying without any tears, then snapped at me across the table, "You made them hate me." No one took the bait. The dad didn't say anything for a long time and then asked the only practical question in the room: could the kids see their counselor in Wagga by telehealth for continuity? The caseworker wrote it down like it was the first good note of the day. On the way out, my cousin tried to corner me near the lifts. A security guard stepped in before she got close enough to make it a breach. I don't know what she would have said. I don't think there's a sentence I haven't already heard. At lunchtime, the school rang. One of the little ones had spiked a fever and was nodding off at his desk. Their dad was stuck on the M4 in a ute with a trailer and asked if I could collect him with his OK on file. So I did. He was so hot to touch it felt like putting your hand to a kettle. The front office handed me the medicine form and a little plastic spoon and thanked me like I was doing something heroic. We sat in my car with the heater on, waiting for his dad, and the kid fell asleep mid-sip with the spoon still in his grip. When his dad pulled up, he just lifted him like he'd done it 1,000 times, tucked him into the back seat under a flannelette shirt, and said he'd text me later. He sent a photo that night, no faces, just the kid's arm in dinosaur pajamas and a thermometer on the coffee table, a bowl of plain noodles going untouched. Temp down. Pancakes retired for the evening. The first supervised visit was booked for this afternoon at a center near Burwood. I wasn't there, I wouldn't have been allowed even if I'd wanted to be, but the dad called me afterwards from his driveway and just breathed for a second. He said the kids went in and came out quickly. Their mom brought bags of things and tried to hand them over, but most of it wasn't allowed. No unsealed food, no electronics, no notes. Staff told her that twice. She tried to send the eldest a folded piece of paper anyway. The supervisor stopped it and logged an incident. The boyfriend turned up outside halfway through. Security moved him on. The middle two had been okay, if stiff. The eldest stayed quiet and asked to finish early. No one screamed. It was still awful. Around 4, I got a text from an unknown number. It was just rat and a rat emoji and a photo of our street from somewhere up the block. The angle made my stomach drop. I screenshotted it, didn't reply, and sent it to the detective with the incident number. He rang back 10 minutes later to say that counted as contact under the provisional AVO if it linked back to my aunt or cousin, and they'd send a car through the area. A highway patrol rolled slow past our house just before dark. I didn't see anyone, but the message had already done what it was meant to do, made the walls feel closer. When it got properly dark, we drove out to drop a spare kid's doona and the hoodie the eldest had given back by mistake. Their dad met us at the gate. The place looked like it had been hit by a small, well-meaning cyclone. Half-assembled bunks, a mountain of clean laundry, a whiteboard on the fridge with everyone's names and jobs. He said the fever had broken. The littlest was lying on the couch watching Bluey, sticky with syrup from nothing in particular. The eldest hung back in the hallway like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to be happy, then showed me a lopsided pencil drawing of a dog he'd put on the fridge and said, "It's meant to be. Bingo, but she looks like a potato." He laughed at his own joke and I had to step outside for some air. When we got home, there was a voicemail from fax confirming the safety plan and dates for the next review, and a separate call from the detective to say my aunt had been served with her court notice and reminded about the AVO conditions. He asked again if I wanted to be informed of any breaches. I told him I didn't want to know but I needed to. He said, "I get that. It's quiet now in that brittle way houses get after a storm." I can hear my girlfriend in the next room, on the phone to her mom, keeping it light. My cousin's block numbers keep changing, but her script doesn't. The dad texted one more time before bed. The eldest had asked if meat pies counted as a vegetable if there were peas in them. I told him I thought it did if you ate the peas on purpose. He replied with a photo of a plate where someone had pushed all the peas into a perfect green circle on the edge. It made me laugh in spite of myself. Nothing about this is simple. But a kid with clean sheets and a plate of something hot will never not feel like a win. Tomorrow there's school drop-off, someone's soccer sign-up sheet to find, another call from fax about the contact center, and a detective with a stack of screenshots. I'm ready for all of it. I didn't ask to be in this, but I can keep the door unlocked when it needs to be and shut when it doesn't. That seems to be my job for now. Update 6. I woke up to my phone buzzing at 6:42 a.m. The detective again. He said the number that sent the rat text was a fresh prepaid, activated the same afternoon at a servo on Parramatta Road. He couldn't tell me more, but he did say they'd requested the CCTV from the counter and that using a carriage service to Menace was on the table. His words, "Same rules," he said. "Don't respond. Save everything." By 9, fax had rung to say they were dropping into the kid's dad's place unannounced and didn't need me, just keeping me in the loop because I'm listed. 10 minutes later the dad texted me a photo of his sink mid-chaos, 2 lunchboxes, an unmixed bottle of cordial, a dishcloth that had clearly lost a fight, and wrote, "Wish us luck." An hour after that he sent another picture of the kitchen table with 3 school hats in a row and a note that said, "All good. No concerns. They'll book GP/dental." Underneath he'd scrawled in pen, "Who knew toothbrushes come in 6-packs?" At midday the deputy at the kids' school called to check my number and confirm the do not release to mom or maternal grandmother flags were still up. She sounded like she'd said it 100 times this week. While I had her, I asked if there was a soccer sign-up sheet hiding in someone's tray. She said she had it in her top drawer and would hand it to the eldest at last bell. When I hung up, I felt ridiculous for how proud that made me. The next bit knocked the wind out of me. Dad called at 1:17 p.m., voice low. He'd had a call saying the kid's mom had gone into the local police station to try and make a report against him for withholding and alienation. They'd pulled up the interim orders, told her it wasn't a police matter and, according to the officer, she'd raised her voice, until a sergeant came out and explained the word order meant exactly what it sounded like. She left without filing anything. Dad said the sergeant had then rung him, told him to keep his head down and stick to the paperwork. "I'm finding new muscles for not reacting," he said. "They're sore." Supervised visit number 2 was booked for 2 p.m. at the same center. I didn't hear anything until just after 3 when a caseworker rang me, of all people, to ask if I'd taken a phone call from my cousin during the visit. I hadn't. She sounded relieved and then sighed. Apparently their mom had tried to play a voice memo to the eldest on her phone, something about what to say next time, and when staff stopped her she argued it was just music. Another incident noted. She tried to hand over an iPad for schoolwork, which isn't allowed. She tried to give them cash. Also not allowed. The eldest asked to cut it short again. "They'll keep the sessions the same length," the caseworker said, but she used the word review in a way that sounded heavy. At 4 on the dot, the school secretary rang from reception. My aunt had turned up at the end of the day and tried to sign one of the kids out for an appointment. When they said no, she waited by the front fence and filmed pickups on her phone. Staff hit the duress alarm again. Police attended again. It counts as an AVO breach. They took her details and told her to leave immediately or she'd be arrested. She left. The deputy sent me an email afterwards with a single sentence: "We've updated our emergency procedures," and attached a photo of a laminated sheet with my name and the dad's at the top in bold. I printed it and stuck it inside our pantry door like that would help anything. We did the soccer thing this morning anyway. The dad asked if we could meet them at the Oval because he didn't know which form went where and he had the littlest balanced on one hip like a koala. The club president slid the paperwork back to me and said, "We'll sort fees later," in a tone that made me think they do this a lot. Someone found a pair of spare shin pads in a milk crate. The eldest stood very straight while a volunteer measured his foot against a boot and said, "Do not put me on orange," like it was a legal clause. He got green. The littlest stuck a sausage sizzle bread to his own face and just left it there like a mask until it fell. On the way back to the car, my phone buzzed with an unknown number again, a missed call and then a voicemail. It was just breathing and then a whisper of my name. I saved it and sent it to the detective with the time and wrote, "Possibly nothing." He rang back and told me it wasn't nothing, it was contact, and he'd added to the brief with the SIM footage request. He asked if we had a camera at our place yet. We didn't. We went to Bunnings and bought the first doorbell that looked like it knew what it was doing. By late afternoon, another legal curveball surfaced. Dad's solicitor called to say my cousin had filed in the Federal Circuit and Family Court for a recovery order and tried to get it listed urgently. It was knocked back in chambers because of the care proceedings. The solicitor used the section number like it was a lullaby. The children's court orders stand. She can't go around them. He asked if I could be available to swear an affidavit for the next return date in Parramatta. Yes. At dusk, the new doorbell chimed for the first time. The app showed a figure in a hoodie hovering at the edge of the path, half in, half out of frame. They put something under the mat and left. We didn't go outside. We called the police, waited for a car to crawl past our fence, and then I opened the door while my girlfriend filmed. From the hallway. It was a plain white envelope. Inside was a printed screenshot of my own Facebook profile picture and the word liar in red text scrawled across it. No postage, no fingerprints that I could see, just cheap floral perfume that wasn't mine clinging to the paper. I bagged it in a sandwich Ziploc like a bad TV detective and handed it to a real one when they pulled up. He took it with blue gloves and said, "You're doing all the right things. Keep doing them." We dropped a bag of hand-me-down footy socks to the dad's place after dinner. The house already looked different. There were chore magnets on the fridge that matched the whiteboard, and someone had drawn a stick figure on the front of each bedroom door. The eldest handed me a permission slip to take to school on Monday and, very seriously, a Lego head he'd found under their couch and thought might be mine, which is impossible and also exactly the kind of gift I will keep. When we left, he ran down the steps and called after me, "Coach says Green is the fast team," like a fact he needed on record. Half an hour ago, the detective texted to say my aunt had been charged with contravening the AVO for the school attempt and given bail conditions not to go within 200 meters of us, the dad, the schools, or the contact center. Her court date for the tires is on the same sheet. He added that they'd be recommending an extension to the orders against my cousin as well, given the voicemail and the envelope, and would serve her if they could find her. "She's not at her listed address," was the last line. It's quiet now in that breath-held way houses get when you're waiting for the next thing. The doorbell app keeps throwing up tiny moths like intruders. My girlfriend is asleep on the couch with a magazine open on her chest. The kids are where they should be. The dad sent one last message before bed, a photo of 4 pairs of runners lined up by a doormat and a caption that just said, "Tomorrow, meat pies after practice if I can figure out oranges at halftime." Then, a minute later, Another text from the eldest, clearly typed with both thumbs for emphasis. Green is always the fast team. I'm taking that as gospel.